And we're preparing to live stream, everybody. Okay, everybody, welcome. I'd like to officially declare the very special meeting of Blayney Shire Council for April officially open, and thank you all very much for your attendance. In opening this meeting, I'd like to recognise the traditional custodians of this land, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I'd like to recognise the people that have chosen to join us tonight on YouTube, and I'd like to welcome them on behalf of my fellow councillors here at this very special meeting, and what is a very historic meeting. The first meeting ever the Blayney Shire Council has had using video conferencing. So it's quite a significant event tonight, and I'd like to ask everybody for their patience while I navigate around the course of the meeting. And certainly on behalf of my fellow councillors, I hope that everybody have had a wonderful Easter and that it was as best as it could be, considering the circumstances that we're all facing under COVID-19. But we do believe that everybody is doing the right thing and we are getting results. So keep up the good work, everybody. Okay, we do have General Manager Rebecca Ryan here with us this evening. We have our Director of Infrastructure, Grant Baker, and we also have Anton Friends, Director of Corporate Services here, and we have Mark Dicker is an apology. We're all social distancing here at the chamber, and we're going pretty well, I believe. Okay, councillors, I'd now like to proceed with the meeting. As you know, this meeting is being recorded and is also going live to YouTube. We have no apologies. Everybody, all my fellow councillors are here in attendance. Councillors, are there any disclosures of interest that anybody would like to offer up in regards to the business here this evening? No disclosures of interest. Thank you very much. We have no public forums, no mayoral minutes. I'd like to now refer you to the confirmation of the minutes of the March council meeting. Can I have a mover that those minutes are a true record? Councillor Denton has moved that way and Councillor Reynolds has seconded that. I'll put that motion. All in favour? Aye. Against? Declared carried. Councillors, are there any matters arising from those minutes? If not, we'll move now to, we have in the papers, you'll see we have two notices of motion. I'll now refer to item 2, page 12, the COVID-19 rate financial hardship policy. There's a couple of recommendations there. The author is Councillor Scott Denton. I would imagine that Councillor Denton would like to move these recommendations. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds, I think, jumped in there first. He's seconded. Councillor Denton, would you like to speak to your recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to, first of all, congratulate the Blayney Shire for their patience in this very unique one that we have with the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Mayor, I think that the responsibility of council to support the community at this time. We have seen a range of measures by the federal and state government to assist residents as well as businesses in the community. Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a slight amendment to my recommendation, being point two, to assist council staff get necessary data in a and if we could just push back May 18th to the June workshop, if I could just make one amendment, please, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Denton. The seconder, are you happy with that slight change? Yes?
Mr. Mayor, could
Okay.
I also just suggest when we're not talking that you put your phone or your computer on mute, because we're getting a lot of bad feedback. I found it very hard to hear Councillor Denton, particularly his amendment. I actually couldn't hear what the amendment was.
Okay, we'll just check. Yeah, sorry, we'll work on that interference. So the amendment is number 2, the report be presented to the June workshop of council. Councillor Reynolds, did you, as the seconder?
So I'm just wondering why put it back to the June workshop rather than the May ordinary meeting of council. The question to Councillor Denton.
If I may.
Yeah, just Councillor Denton, would you like to answer that?
Yeah,
Councillor.
if I may, Mr. Mayor, just to do with the cycle of the rates, Councillor Reynolds, I just felt as if that it might give council staff time to get some more accurate data with the rate cycle being before June but after May.
Councillor Reynolds, did you hear what Councillor Denton was saying?
I think I got most of the gist with regard to the rate cycle, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add my support as the seconder for this notice of motion. Some of our businesses are hurting. They're hurting terribly. Some of the members of our community are hurting. It's great to see that some of our businesses continue to operate, like Nestle, like Blayney Frozen Foods, like even the CTLX, even though most farmers can't go to it. But there are some individuals that are hurting and hurting quite severely. And any assistance we can provide through rates, through deferment, without penalty, in particular, would be a benefit to our community. As I stated, it's a deferment, would be one of the potential options here, rather than cancelling the rates. And hopefully that's a small measure which can potentially help a number in the community. And if there are other ways that we can help in the community, we as council are always open to hear how we could potentially help the community. And particularly on the way out, I suspect there may be more notices of motion in the future with regard to trying to get some of our help some of our community come out the other side once some of these restrictions are relaxed, particularly in promotion of with regard to tourism and businesses. I suspect that a lot of businesses are going to look for our help, particularly in places like Millthorpe that are a tourist locality as opposed to a commercial locality. So I expect that we should be probably looking at further help coming out the other side, and hopefully the other side is not that far away.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Any other councillor would like to make a comment on Councillor Reynolds, Councillor Denton's notice of motion? Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I will remind councillors, I certainly agree with what's been said this evening in regard to the notice of motion. But we must remember too, fellows, we currently have a policy in place, a hardship policy, which any members of the public that feel the need in the first instance of now or prior to the suggested amendment of June workshop, through council they can set up a meeting with the general manager, as we're all well aware, and maybe by telephone, possibly not face to face, of course, unless we practice the social distancing. But we do have a policy there to accommodate much of what is in the recommendation here, which is great. And I think to acknowledge the situation of the COVID-19 as it is at the moment is wonderful, and we need to do that. And yes, I guess it's a bit unknown as to where it all will come to an end, of course, but until that time happens, I'm sure that we as a council are able to support our General Manager in giving her the opportunity to meet with these people that have come forward and identified themselves, so that we're not having to tell people, well, we haven't made a decision as to what other assistance we can give you. I know it's a very flexible policy in the sense that we're quite willing to adapt and help people any way we can to reduce the burden in the immediate period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with everything's been said, and I thank Councillor Denton for bringing this motion forward. It's very important that we look after our ratepayers in any way we can, and I just endorse what everyone's been saying. There is one aspect I'd like to add, that in looking at the hardship position of our ratepayers, I wonder whether at the workshop we can also consider the impact on council's own position. I'm just thinking of two aspects of that. One is our ability at the moment to get through our workload with our full complement of staff and so on. And the second is any impact on council's own financial position, working our way through this particular difficult period. Given our low levels of unrestricted cash, I just want to make sure that we're also looking after council as well as looking after our ratepayers.
Thank you very much, Councillor Somerville. I'm sure that's well worth picking up when we receive the report. Okay, councillors, any other comments on Councillor Denton's notice of motion? If not, I'll put that motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you. Okay, council now moves through to page 14, item 4. That's the council resolution report. Recommendation there that council notes this report. Have a mover.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Somerville has second that motion. Any questions or comments in regards to this report? Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question in relation to the Blayney Solar agreement to lease with our friends from Verd Developments. As I recall, the actual the time for the lease to be exercised had in fact expired, and we got, after the event, we got an application to extend the termination date or the date by which they've got to take up their lease, and which we're happy to do. But I see that we haven't got any response from them by now. I would have thought that if they invested the money that they've invested and their agreement for lease had expired, they'd be pretty keen to take up council's offer to extend the date by which they've got to take up their lease. I wonder whether maybe the director could comment as to whether he sees anything in this which might suggest they might be having second thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Mr Director, your comment in regards to Councillor Somerville's question?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, Verde Generation have indicated that they are certainly keen to execute the lease. We're just awaiting the provision of the lease for execution again. So they've certainly indicated that they wish to progress. I suppose the hold-up is the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Before I believe Councillor Reynolds had a question, I do apologise. We did have a motion. We have a motion here on the business papers that Councillor Reynolds had put up. When we finish with this item, we might go back to it just in case Councillor Reynolds would like to speak to it. So I do apologise for skipping over that, but we've got to come back to it. So at the moment, we're discussing the resolution, council resolution report. Any other questions or comments regards to that? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions. Firstly, with regard to the King George Oval Ball, are we going to, actually I think I've just answered my question, the quarterly budget review, I assume we're going to take that sum out. But my question is, do we need that money, that $68,100, which has been allocated for that, for the sewage pipeline project, or will that money just go back into the King George Fund?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I'll ask the Director if you'd like to comment on that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention is to hold on to that money for that project. Whether it specifically ends up funding a pipe or a tank is undecided, but it will be used as part of the funding for that overall project.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Councillor Reynolds?
One other question, one other resolution which seems to have fallen off the register was with regard to Millthorpe. The Traffic Committee, I suppose it was over a year ago, resolved to move some stop signs, etc., in front of the post office to improve the visual for cars coming down Victoria Street. It seems to have dropped off. Is there any reason why it's dropped off, or is it just accidentally fallen off the register?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice. I'm pretty sure it still sits within our traffic register, but I don't recall seeing it in this resolution report for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this report? No hands? Okay, if not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, we'll just jump back now, and I do apologise again. To item 3, page 13, there was a notice of motion put forward, or a recommendation put forward by Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Reynolds, do you like to talk to that before we actually make any decision one way or another?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put this notice of motion up after communication from Australian Community Media that they were closing down all but 12 papers in a print version. So all the daily papers, like the Western Advocate in Bathurst, the Central Western Daily in Orange, and the Daily Liberal in Dubbo, would continue, and all the other weekly papers or bi-weekly papers would continue. Within 24 hours, so I was quick last Monday to get this notice of motion in. Within 24 hours, the federal government had come in with $50 million, and the decision was made. I got a phone call from Mark Logan, the editor of the Blayney Chronicle, to inform me that the Oberon, Blayney and Grenfell papers had been saved in print edition. So with that news at this stage, while they're still in print edition, I wish to withdraw this notice of motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. So the minutes will show that this notice of motion has been withdrawn. Fellow councillors, are you happy with that? Understand that? Very good. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. We'll now go back to our next item. Okay, councillors, now draw your attention to item 5, page 24. It's a Risk, Work, Health and Safety Quarterly Report. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way and Councillor Newstead has seconded. Any questions or comments in regard to this report? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be very brief. An extensive report. Again, congratulations to the staff member involved for compiling a very comprehensive and very informative report, which indicates how we're performing from various injuries, etc. And generally, on most, we are down or very close to 0 or 1, which is a very good sign that, and particularly with toolbox meetings, site assessments, etc., that we're doing a lot of those. So it's great information to show the community how conscious we are of work health and safety.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regard to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you, councillors. Now move through to item 6, page 27, report of council investments as at the 31st of March. There's recommendations there 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for both these recommendations? Councillor Kingham has moved that way. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you.
Councillor Ewan has seconded that. Questions or comments in regards to this item, councillors? Councillor Kingham. Councillor Kingham, you're on mute. Please hit the right button. Thank you.
Can you hear me at all? No?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. This is a
Thank
good
you.
result. I feel a good result from the staff because finances are very turbulent at the moment, and there's been some quick thinking there. And I applaud the Chief Financial Officer and the senior staff for doing the best they can in relation to this. And we're in a very sound position. And I'd just like to thank the staff for keeping us on the straight and narrow.
Thank you, Councillor Kingham, and you're correct. I support your comments. It's a very difficult time for all organisations, as you've mentioned. Councillors, Councillor Reynolds has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, or a comment straight question, Mr. Mayor. The over $2,700 loss with T Corp. I assume that, and the quick action of staff to get us out of the T Corp situation. Again, commend the staff on that. The question is, was this in the contract? Were we aware that we could actually make a loss on our T Corp investment if things went belly up, as by the looks of it they have?
Yes, very unusual, Councillor Reynolds, for sure. I'm sure the Director would like to comment on that. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Through Mr. Mayor, staff weren't aware. However, when the reporting first came through, we noted that there was a unit price on those investments, and while they were performing well, we thought we'd take advantage of the better return. However, the moment we saw some capital losses come along, staff took quick action to move the funds and not expose council to the risk of losses. And unfortunately, there's no other call product available through T Corp, so we had to move it to another institution.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour? Against? I declared carried. Councillors, now go to item 7, page 32, Council Superannuation Discussion Paper. There's a recommendation there. Have a mover for this recommendation. Councillor Newstead has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Somerville has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It does highlight the low remuneration that councillors get, at least it's a welcome opportunity for councillors to have some input and to highlight to the community that presently councillors aren't considered as employees and therefore aren't entitled to superannuation. So I, for one, as a councillor, will be putting a submission in to our council if this recommendation gets up on both the remuneration and also the superannuation that councillors don't get at this point in time. So in calculation as a councillor of Blayney Shire Council for a full 4-year term, you would expect to get less than $5,000 in superannuation put into your account, and you'd wonder whether fees might chew away a fair proportion of that contribution over that 4 years. So as part of that as well, I'd like to see how we could have go into a scheme, if there was one available, that wouldn't chew it away in fees.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. This certainly has been an issue that's been discussed for a long time in local government circles, and I guess it's an opportunity that the state government has given all of us as a sector, and I know there will be plenty of submissions in regards to the discussion paper. It's very complicated. There's a lot of issues to be considered. So I look forward to anybody who'd like to put forward a submission. I'd encourage that. Councillors, any other questions or comments? Councillor Somerville and then Councillor Newstead, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I gather there's quite a bit of feedback coming through the audio when I speak, so I'll keep my comments fairly brief. I think I fully support the payment of superannuation, like every other pretty well category of worker in the country is entitled to. I know the technical argument is that we're not employees, which is absolutely correct, but exactly the same analysis applies to company directors who are not employees of the company. They're in a very similar position to councillors, yet superannuation guarantee is paid on top of company directors' fees. So I can't see there should be any difference between that and councillors' incomes. I think it's the inequity which is the main reason that we should be pushing for this. I know the argument is that it will encourage more females to apply and it will encourage younger candidates to apply. That would be fantastic. I'd like to know, though, whether in Queensland, where councillor remuneration is very generous and superannuation is paid on top of that, whether their experience has in fact been to get more women and younger people to stand for council. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Somerville. Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm sure that will be picked up. There's a lot of comparisons. Local Government New South Wales did a very comprehensive report a couple of years ago around what happens in the other states, plus what happens. There's a lot of benchmarking with the non-for-profit and corporate sector, and certainly local government councils end up at the bottom of that list every time. Councillor Newstead, would you like to comment?
Yeah, just quickly agree with what David and Councillor Somerville and Councillor Reynolds said. And going on the Queensland one, had a quick look at the comparison, and their average for just a councillor, not even including the mayor, is around about $50,000 a year, which certainly makes our remuneration look pretty low. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. As Councillor Somerville said, everybody else that works, even though we're not employed by the council, gets their super. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newstead. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, item 8, page 49, the adoption of council policies. Recommendation there. Do I have the mover for this recommendation? Councillor Ewan has moved that way. I believe Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose a question now, if we're going to adopt this policy tonight, the Carcoar Road Bridge that we opened a number of months ago, whether we could quickly now move to looking at naming that, not tonight, but as in bring that forth now that we have this policy, particularly on naming bridges.
Yes, that would be correct, Councillor Reynolds. That would be quite appropriate to do that. Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you. Move now to item 9, page 65, the adoption of fraud and corruption control policy and plan. Recommendation there, this plan be adopted. Have a mover. Councillor Somervale has moved that way. Councillor Reynolds has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? Everybody pretty happy with it? Yeah? Very good. No questions or comments. I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. It's a bit awkward this with the delay, but so far so good. Everyone's going well. Okay, councillors, item 10, page 77, recycled water quality policy. There's 2 recommendations there. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Somervale has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ewan has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments about this policy going on public exhibition? Councillor Somervale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've only have a question in relation to the wording of the policy itself. I raised this with the Director of Water and Wastewater during the week, and we didn't have the policy with us at the time, but my recollection was on reading through it that we should have included in the various dot points on the first page of the policy, where it says to achieve this we will, and there's 7 or 8 dot points there. I think we need to add there, ensure that operators are properly trained. Now, when I spoke to the manager of water and wastewater, he thought that was in there. I've since checked and it's not in there. So before this policy goes on exhibition, I would like to see an extra dot point added which says ensure operators are properly trained.
Thank you very much, Councillor Somervale. Very appropriate. Councillor Ewan, are you happy with that slight?
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Somervale.
Thank you. It's been made note of. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this policy? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great policy to be developing, particularly with the water situation in Lake Rowlands at the moment and Orange's water supply, both still very low. And Central Tablelands water, I think I stand to be corrected, but level 5 water restrictions, Councillor Somervale. So to have a policy that we can find alternate water and use it both for our own use, but also potentially made available, hopefully in the next few months for industry, so that we can see if we don't get winter rainfall, and hopefully we do get winter rainfall and Lake Rowlands starts to fill back up and Orange's water supply and everywhere else starts to fill back up. But if we don't, hopefully this will enable some industries, particularly in our shire, to continue operations, particularly like cement mixing and things like that, that may have to shut down if we went to tighter water restrictions. So it's great that we're moving to use our recycled water, and we endorse the modification to this recommendation, and looking forward to any public comment back before we look at this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? I declare carried. Move now through to item 11, page 82. Director Infrastructure Services Monthly Report. Recommendation there, the report be received and noted. Do I have a mover for this recommendation?
Thank you.
Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Councillor Kingham got in first. This is seconded. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this report? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mayor. First question, Streetfield Close was supposed to be sealed last week. Has it now been completed? Because I haven't been to Blayney to have a look.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was completed on Friday.
Looks great.
So my next question is, are we now progressing it through to get a subdivision as quickly as possible so that these blocks can then be built on?
Yes, we are.
Any idea of time frame, Mr. Mayor?
Got to get a subdivision certificate is being dealt with now. Site's got to be cleaned up, I believe, and a little bit of landscaping potentially, depending on the season, will have to be done. So it's 100% finished. So not too far away, but I think we don't know the exact date, Councillor Reynolds, but it's pretty close. Mr. Director, would you like to say something?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the items you refer to, yes, relatively straightforward, but our hands will then be tied by state government land registry services in going through that process of registration.
The land registry, yeah. Okay. But hopefully sooner than later. Okay, Councillor Reynolds, you had another question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, or actually a comment. Just like to congratulate the contractors and council with regard to Carcore and the toilet block stroke barbecue facility, etc. on the rec ground. Had the opportunity to drive past on Friday and looks fantastic. And in talking to the member for Bathurst, Paul Toole, about it, he congratulated council, said it was a great facility. So hopefully we'll move to the next stage of doing the access, car parking and footpath, etc., to have access into it in the next few weeks. But fantastic looking small facility there in Carcore.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Councillor Reynolds. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Kingham.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to talk about the small bridge replacement program. Now, we saved some money on some of the bridges out there, and the intention, I thought, was to divert that to a better bridge at Lebeter Street. Now, the hydrology reports come back with the idea of a 30-metre bridge. Well, that's just way over the top. And I think what we really need to do is to get to the stage where inviting different contractors to put forward the idea of how they would overcome the situation with a straight bridge. You know, I think we should have somewhere around about $285,000 left in the small bridges program, and I'd like to see the bridge built for that amount of money without exceeding the overall budget. So I think we should be getting to the stage within the next month or so that we're actually calling for tenders to for their design of that bridge and how they'd go about putting a bridge there. But I would like to emphasise that we're not really, the community is not really asking for a bridge that is never flooded, such as the Carcore Road Bridge, the last one that we built. So I think we need to be careful about this, but certainly no one's anticipating a 30-metre bridge.
Thank you, Councillor Kingham. I might ask the Director to make a comment in regards to that issue that you've raised. Thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councillor Kingham's concerns, I've just had to check the report again to just clarify my understanding of it, and to look at, just to give you some scale of the size of this. We all know about a 1 in 100 year flood, or what's called a 1% chance of being exceeded every year. The level of water for that type of flood would be 1.5 metres over the current deck. For a 1 in 20 year or 5%, it would be 1 metre over the deck. And the bridge that we have at the moment, a flood that we refer to in the report as a 0.5 EY, or has a 40% chance of being exceeded every year. That flood actually results in 180 millimetres of water over the deck of the existing bridge. Now, the key influencing factor of this is that just downstream of the bridge is another catchment that comes in, and because of the creek shape and alignment, that water does not get away, and so when it is impacted by the water coming from upstream of our bridge, it ponds backwards. So the water starts to overflow the bridge. It's not necessarily the water running down the creek, it's the water backing up the creek. So to avoid being influenced by that 0.5 EY, or the 40% chance of being exceeded every year, would require a bridge 30 metres long at the same level that it is now, simply so we could open up the creek's cross-section, create that wider area for the water so that it's not sitting over the deck of the bridge. So that creates quite a challenge. The other way to do that is to lift the bridge, and that allows you to achieve the same cross-sectional area, but you narrow the bridge but lift it higher up. You get that same amount of area underneath the bridge for that water to sit under and flow under and not impact the ability to cross of water crossing over the deck of the bridge. So there's a number of options to be considered, and we'll evaluate a few scenarios of how high do we lift the bridge so that we don't have to widen the creek and so forth. And that'll come back to you later.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Yeah, obviously there's still a fair bit of work to do in regards to coming up with a final design for that bridge. I guess we'll have to wait, Councillor Kingham, and see what options do come up. Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this report? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you, councillors. Now move through to item 12, page 86. This is development servicing plan for sewerage services. Recommendation there that this servicing plan go out to public exhibition 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for these? Councillor Somervale has moved that way. Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Questions or comments, councillors, in regards to this item? If not, I'll put Councillor Somervale has his hand up. Councillor Somervale, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, the notional floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a pretty important document that's about to go out on public exhibition, particularly as we've now very thoroughly calculated what the cost of new development, what a developer of a new development ought to be contributing as the cost of sort of the entry fee to sharing in a lot of sunk infrastructure costs. And council is recommending that we do not charge that full amount. In other words, existing users are asked to effectively subsidise new development in the interests of growing the communities, which I fully support. But it's a very big cross subsidy, $55 or 8.6% being added to the typical residential bill for sewer, is quite a big cross subsidy. So I think that's that needs to be explained very carefully, because it's necessary in order to comply with best practice management. The amount of the cross subsidy needs to be disclosed to the sewer ratepayers. So we need to have a very good story about why this cross subsidy is being put in place. The second thing I'd like to say is that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that apart from cross-subsidising new developments coming in, still need in the sewer business to cover the long-run marginal costs of operating the business, and that's necessary to comply with best practice as well. I spoke to the manager of water and wastewater during the week about this, and whilst this is not part of this recommendation, as a totally separate exercise, we still need to do the calculation of what the sewer charges, leaving aside this cross subsidy, what the sewer charges themselves ought to be next year. Because as we all know, the sewer business has been running at an annual loss for the last few years. And we also know that the Auditor General is going to be focusing this year on how local water utilities price their services and making sure they comply with best practice. So we need to be really careful that we look at two things here. One is this cross subsidy and fully explain how much the cross subsidy is and why people are being asked to pay it. And the second thing is we mustn't confuse that with the importance of making sure that we properly cost the sewer business as part of the annual sewer charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Very, very good points. Very good summary of the report and this recommendation. Councillors, do you have any other questions or comments in regards to this item? So it's been moved by Councillor Somerville, seconded by Councillor Newstead. There's no other questions or comments. I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Thank you, councillors. Now move through to item 13, page 89. That is the adoption of the road hierarchy, renewal and maintenance policy. Recommendation there, the policy be adopted. Do I have a mover for this recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead, thank you, has seconded that. Questions or comments regard to this policy, councillors? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know I'm late in asking for an inclusion, given it's up for adoption tonight. But one area I noticed, and it was only this afternoon, was the lack of mention of weed management. I think it's important as part of our road hierarchy, and particularly the maintenance policy, that we include some reference to weed management on our council roads. That's not currently there. I know it's the operation of Upper Macquarie County Council, but whether it's possible, before we adopt it, we could add one extra line for the management of weeds on the road verges in our shire.
I'm sure there's no reason why we couldn't put that in there, Councillor Reynolds. I believe that we could do that, even though we're about to adopt the policy. I'm sure we could make that amendment. Thank you very much for bringing it forward. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this policy? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, now move through to item 14, page 91, and we're looking now at the minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting held on the 3rd of April. There's recommendations there, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way, who also chairs this committee. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead, thank you, has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recommendation 3 and 4, both in relation to Water Street. There has been some concern about line marking, about coming out of Adelaide Lane. So the Traffic Committee have come up with some ideas there, including having the hold line before the footpath. You might notice that in some modern developments. So therefore, people have to stop before the footpath to reduce the potential impact on pedestrians walking there. We're also moving to improve the fog lines to provide a 3.5 metre lane width between Adelaide and Osmond Streets in Blayney. So I think that's an important development. Hopefully it will improve the traffic flow, traffic management in Water Street, particularly with the new childcare centre in Water Street. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I certainly support that. Obviously, Water Street has become very busy over the last few years with all the development there. So I think a very appropriate recommendation from the Traffic Committee. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to the minutes of the Traffic Committee? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, Council, now move through to item 15, page 94, the draft Blayney Settlement Strategy 2020. Recommendations there 1, 2 and 3. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Anybody move up? Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead, thank you, has seconded that. Councillor, any questions or comments in regards to our settlement strategy going out for public exhibition? Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is settlement strategy has had a lot of work put into it over the last 12 months or longer, and it's coming to the point where we're hopefully got it somewhere near what we want to see the direction of our strategy go over the next coming years of the Shire. And we're not saying it's perfect by any means, I don't think, but being able to go out to on public exhibition for 28 days gives the wider community the opportunity to make comment and submission to this, so that after that period of time we can then come back and hopefully, you know, if there should be alterations or changes, we can adopt those into the strategy prior to adoption by council. So I think it's a terrific document that, and yeah, I believe that the wider community will have some queries and questions with it, and that's what the whole process is about, to for us to be able to get it as right as possible, I guess, for the few years ahead for us. So yeah, I'm suggesting that you guys, my fellow councillors, support this document going out to public exhibition for the 28 days suggested.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. I believe Councillor Kingham and then Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Kingham.
Mr. Mayor, two things. Firstly, there's several aspects that I disagree with, and I've mentioned these before, particularly the 400 square metres for housing entitlement in the villages, which I totally disagree with. But I'd like to know what the third recommendation means.
Righto.
Okay, I'm sure the gentleman would like to comment. Thank you, Councillor Kingham. Madam GM.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that just means if there's any typographical errors, or if the council has had there was population data or any other little minor errors that we'd made, that I would approve those before we put them onto exhibition. That was all, just in case there was something that came up tonight that you'd seen, there was a spelling mistake or a map change or something odd that I needed to change before it went out on public exhibition. And I just wanted to note too, through you, Mr. Mayor, that the public exhibition is actually 50 days is the recommendation, and I've just informed Councillor Ewan of that as well, that it, as you noticed in the community engagement strategy, which is very important, we have extended it, recommended to 50 days to make sure that we can have those meetings and deal with the COVID-19 situation that we are dealing with at the moment, and making sure that we can talk through this and go to each of the villages and, you know, have those all important hall meetings, you know, and talk about each of the impacts with each of those villages and any residents who wish to talk about it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam GM. Councillor King.
Mr Mayor, what I'm really wanting to know, when we say in column the first recommendation that we're endorsing that, aren't we really endorsing the release of it? I don't get the impression that we're actually approving every single item. I certainly don't. And I just want to make sure that the intention here is we're endorsing the release of it for public exhibition rather than endorsing every single aspect of health and consultancy.
Thank you, Councillor Kingham. I would certainly agree with your comments after what we went through in 2012. I thoroughly understand how important this document is. We have a very comprehensive community engagement strategy around it, which will probably take quite a long time. We all need to make sure that we're prepared to engage the community at all the levels. It is quite a complicated document, but there's also on the document that I am very excited about, there is some really, in amongst there, there's some really exciting strategies about how we can grow the villages. There's some great initiatives around potential dual occupancy for Millthorpe and Blayney, which is really exciting. So some quite innovative planning strategies in there as well. But the main thing is that we need to make sure that our community appreciates the work that's gone into this and that they understand the potential impact that they have. And we want to know what those impacts are potentially from them as individuals. While we're trying to look at a Shire-wide strategy, each individual will be affected potentially in a different way. And that's what this community engagement is all about. After we went through 2012, we will make sure, Councillor Kingham, I can assure you, that everyone will understand what it means, and we will look forward to whatever feedback we get from people. So we're going to give ourselves plenty of time. We were always going to give ourselves plenty of time, regardless of the restrictions that COVID-19 is now placing on us. We were always going to take our time with this very important document and our engagement strategy with the community. Councillors, any other questions or comments? I believe Councillor Reynolds had a question or comment. Thank you, Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to express my disappointment in the document. The document is very shallow. It doesn't really give us much of an indication of strategies. It ignores parts of our Shire. It doesn't give us indications about other parts. From what I understand, for example, North Millthorpe, potentially we're withdrawing the ability to subdivide down, but it doesn't say that in it. There are so many errors in this document. I have spent at least 10 to 12 hours trying to work with staff to get corrections, changes, and I get ignored. And I am really frustrated as a councillor. The staff are ignoring major errors in this document. As far as I'm concerned, this document should not go out on public display until this document is corrected and fixed. And it's disappointing that staff give me word of mouth that they will fix it and then do not fix it. And I am really frustrated as a councillor. And as far as I'm concerned, I would move that we actually defer this document until it is fixed, until we get a good document. And that's what I've been striving to do as a councillor, to get a good document out there for community consultation. At the moment, this document is substandard. It's been cut and paste from other council areas and little inclusions made to our council. So I, for one, am frustrated. I'll move, but I doubt if I'll get the support to actually take this document back and rewrite it, do a good document before we put it out on public display. Thank
you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item? If there's no other. Councillor Ewan has got his hand up. Councillor Ewan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, can I ask Councillor Reynolds, is he moving that suggested motion that he was speaking about just a moment ago?
Yes, you're correct, Councillor Ewan. I was moving if there was a support for a seconder to actually then debate that motion. If not, at least my opinion is expressed to the community about this document.
Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds like then, Councillor Reynolds, if I understand, you'd like to move that this document is deferred from going out to public exhibition at this time. Is that correct, Councillor Reynolds?
That is
Okay,
correct.
Councillor Reynolds has put that amendment up. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Okay, Councillor Reynolds, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you.
I guess you've made your point pretty well, unless you'd like to touch on a couple of the key points.
Mainly, Mr. Mayor, I want to see a quality document go out to the community, a document that is not full of holes, that has a clear strategy, a clear target, so that we can grow our shire. Our little shire can become quite a substantial shire. We are a dormitory shire for Orange, with about 30% of our working population working in Orange, another 10% working in Bathurst. So it's important that we look at where we need to have growth and how we can encourage growth in our community. And I'd rather put out a good document at this point in time, so that then the community can have major input into it, rather than a substandard document, as far as I'm concerned, until we can actually get a good document and put it out. So that's what I would like to get across to councillors, and I'd rather put a good quality document out there rather than be ripped to bits over a substandard document.
Thank you. Councillor Newstead, as the seconder, would you like to comment?
Yeah, look, I suppose everybody's had a call from one person over this document. I just want to make sure that during the period that it's on display, that we certainly do engage the community. This one person has said to me that he's had no input, that there was a meeting held, but he didn't know about it, and other people that he's spoken to didn't know about it. So I just want to make sure that we can get everybody on side. I know that's not always possible, because what suits one person may not suit another. So, but I'd just like to make sure that that it's all done correctly. So that's why I was supporting Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Councillor Newstead. Any other? Councillor Ewan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can understand probably Councillor Reynolds where he's coming from to an extent, but fellows, we're endorsing this document to go out for public exhibitions, for comment and community consultation over the next 50 days. No one said that this was the final document. Councillor Reynolds, you need to put pen to paper and put in your submissions to the document, whether they be personal or a wider view of the wider community, I believe. I think this document is a starting point for our future settlement strategy. It's obvious that you're not happy with it whatsoever, but there's some great strategies in there, and I believe that we need to speak, as was said, with the wider community, and we have consultation meetings organised right throughout the Shire, through our villages and townships of Millthorpe and Blayney, to get this document to where we all would like it to see, and particularly in your case, Councillor Reynolds. I believe that some of your comments are a bit harsh as onto our staff. Our staff are taking direction from us, and I believe that this is the starting point to get the final document to where it will sit for the wider community. So part of your job, Councillor Reynolds, as a good councillor, would be to go and speak to the wider community and explain to them and ask them to read the document and put in submissions if they're not happy with what's in it currently, so that at the end of the day, end of the 50-day document time, we will end up with what hopefully will be a document to suit our council going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Councillors, any questions or comments on the amendment of Councillor Reynolds? Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've had several workshops about this document, and we've been focusing on the main strategic issues here. And I know Councillor Reynolds has commented previously that he was disappointed in the document. There were holes in it. There were references to other council areas frankly, I was embarrassed that I didn't pick them up, but A, embarrassed that I didn't pick them up, and B, embarrassed that they were there, because I am particularly keen that everything this council puts out is a quality document, even if it's only a draft. So I'm a bit disappointed that we hear now, having been through a couple of workshops in relation to this, that the various issues that Councillor Reynolds had raised, which I took to mean tidying up the document, cross-references were wrong, references had been cut and pasted from other documents. It was all just a bit sloppy. I'm disappointed to hear that Councillor Reynolds thinks those issues haven't been taken up. I guess my point to Councillor Reynolds now, before I decide what I'm going to do about the motion, is are your concerns directed to the substance of the document, the sort of 7 or 8 key strategies that underpin what we're trying to do to grow the Shire over the next medium term, or are they in relation to just not wanting to put out what looks like a pretty sloppy document?
Councillor Reynolds, a question from Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a combination of both, Councillor Somerville. The document, and I have spent hours with the director in his office, on the phone with the planner about this document, as well as in workshops. I've spent about 12 to 14 hours working on this document, providing feedback. There are still some of our villages, I think it says Mandurama has 400 and something people in it, and Lyndhurst has about 200. There are glaring errors, factual errors, but it's also the strategy of this document. We want to grow, for example, one example that's been put forward in this document is we want to put 1 acre, potentially 1 acre houses on a floodplain at Millthorpe. We've already seen what's happened in Unwin and Stubbock Street. The consultant doesn't appear to have actually gone onto the ground to have a look at potential ramifications, but also where do we need the growth in the Shire? Where is the potential and how can we help develop that growth? Where is the demand in our Shire? Is it in the north of our Shire? Is it in the south? Is it in the Blayney area? And besides Blayney and Millthorpe getting some mention, it's really not looking at a strategy, as far as I'm concerned, to actually potentially grow our Shire and make it the Shire that's about 8,000 people by, I think it's 2036 or more under the current program. So I would rather put out a good document and put it out for public consultation rather than a document full of errors, as in one of them is residential in Millthorpe, is the woodbine factory. It's classed as residential. But there's just glaring errors all over this document, as far as I could see, with it, as well as statistical errors. They've got rid of the errors of we were Hilltops Council in one section, we're Dubbo Regional Council in another section of it on the original draft. But I am very disappointed that a lot of the suggestions and a lot of the time that I spent, and Councillor Ewan has said that I should go and put pen to paper. I did. I then went to the director, sat down with the director, and a lot of the concerns and issues that I raised were ignored. And that's why I'm frustrated, because I spent my time trying to get a good document. And we haven't got a good document, as far as I'm concerned, out in the community for public exhibition if we approve the exhibition of this document tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this motion? Councillor Denton.
I too share the concerns that Councillor Reynolds has with this document. If it was one of my students, I would fail them if it was submitted. I wish to go on the record and say that I think that the problem with the very foundation through the consulting that staff can only work with what they've been doing, and I think it's the very foundation where the problem is. So given the extraordinary circumstances of the COVID-19 and such staff have worked tirelessly on all fronts. I'm going to go out on staff and say that they've done the best with what they can. But nevertheless, I believe needs to be thrown out and started again. I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed.
Thank you, Councillor Denton, if you're finished. Councillors, any other questions or comments? We're now debating, we continue to debate the motion, Councillor Reynolds, that is draft Blayney Settlement Strategy to be deferred from going out to public exhibition. Any other questions or comments? I would just like to say that it is a very big comprehensive document, and I acknowledge Councillor Reynolds' frustrations. For me though, 2 points I'd like to make is that it is still a document. The key initiatives in that document, we need to get out to the community for their feedback, whether it be the proposal to increase the minimum lot size, whether it be the potential suggestion of master planning, North Millthorpe, which has come out of the strategy, and that's certainly without preempting anything, I fully support that, let alone the very innovative strategy of potentially allocating residential blocks that are within 500 metres of our village areas that are already a standalone subdivision to give them a building entitlement. That is a massive step forward. That is some serious strategies in that document. The whole idea of this document is to get it out to the public. We had a very long, comprehensive engagement just to delay it while I'm not sure what we would do. We need to get it out there, in my opinion. And I would look forward to engaging the community on all the points that Councillor Reynolds has brought up and Councillor Kingham has brought up, as well as promoting and supporting and talking up some of the wonderful positive strategies that are also within that document. So it's not all negative. It may not be the perfect document that anyone's ever seen, but it's a very difficult, large, comprehensive document that I believe needs to go to public exhibition now. It's the only way we can start the long process of engaging the community and getting the feedback on some of these key strategic issues. I don't want to be sitting around dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Okay, that's important. This is about the future of using planning to grow the future of our shire, as Councillor Reynolds has highlighted. There is some wonderful initiatives in that strategy that I'm quite excited to see what the community feedback will be. But we can't do it unless it's out there in the community. So I will acknowledge the issues Councillor Reynolds has brought up, but I personally would like to see it go out to public exhibition now, a long public period exhibition. We all have opportunities to put our own submissions in. We'll all have the opportunity to engage our community at lots of different levels over the next 2 to 3 to 4 months. So, any other questions or comments? We have a motion. We have an amendment that Councillor Reynolds has put forward, seconded by Councillor Newstead, that draft Blayney Shire Settlement Strategy 2020 be deferred from going out on public exhibition. There's no other questions or comments. We'll have a vote on it. I'll certainly ask you if you could be very clear with your hand raising. So there's no other questions or comments. Okay, I'll put the motion for the amendment. The amendment I'll put. All in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? I declare the amendment successful. The amendment now becomes a standing motion. I'll put that motion. All in favour? All in favour? Thank you. Against? I declare carried. Thank you.
Do we need to record names on the planning letter?
Is it the planning letter?
Draft document. Can we get?
We'll take advice on it.
Yeah.
We know how to
You do? Okay.
Thank you, councillors. Just getting a little bit of feedback on that. Okay, councillors, now moving through to item 16, page 98, report of the Central Board meeting and Central New South Wales Joint Organisation meeting held 27th of February. There's a recommendation there. Do I have to move this recommendation? Before I will move it with a slight amendment, the fact that I was actually an apology at that meeting. Councillor Ewan attended on my behalf, so we'll have the minutes reflect that. So I will move this recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead, thank you. Any questions or comments regards to these minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, we now have come to the end of our ordinary meeting. We do have a meeting, item to consider in closed committee. I'll now ask that, in accordance with the Local Government Act 93 and the Local Government General Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10.2 of the Act and should be dealt with in part of the meeting closed to the media and public. That's item 17, and it's COVID-19 request for rental relief. This matter is considered to be confidential under section 10 of the Local Government Act as it deals with personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer. Can I have a mover that we go into closed committee? Councillor Kingham has moved that way. Councillor Denton has seconded. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Now, part of this, we have an issue with the technical side. We are going to have to go off YouTube. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all those people that have joined us tonight on YouTube, and I trust that everyone stays safe, and we look forward to the next council meeting. Thank you.